Hello and welcome back to Ms. Sessa's virtual classroom. So this is the example that we did in class today. So I just wanted to go over it to make sure that everyone understood. If you are not here, please go back and make sure you get all of those notes from those slides. That's very important to have that in your notebook because we will be doing a bunch of different inheritance pattern types. So we've already gone over dominant and recessive, and today we're going over incomplete dominance, and then we'll go over codominance later in this video. So here is the example that we did in class. We have a cross between a red bird and a yellow bird produces offspring that are orange. This is incomplete dominant because we see a blending, sort of like mixing paint colors. So there's not one that is dominant over the other, you get a mix together. So the first thing I wanted you to do was draw a Punnett square showing this cross. So what are the genotypes of the orange offspring? Remember, I said this is the one time you need to use different letters. For incomplete dominance, you have different letters for your genotype. If it's just regular dominant and recessive, that needs to be the same letters with uppercase and lowercase. That is not the case for incomplete dominance. So here is the answer to number one. We have our red genotype, capital R, our yellow genotype, capital Y, gives us all genotypes of R and Y. R and Y together are orange. Notice that this genotype, even though it stands for orange, is not any different letters. We have a capital R and we have a capital Y. So you can't change this genotype to OO because that will mess you up. You have to know that it's an incomplete dominance and that red mixed with yellow gives us orange. So that was our first question. The second question said, what would be the possible phenotypes of the offspring produced by the mating of two orange birds? I wanted you to draw this Punnett square. If you haven't finished this one, now would be the time to pause this video and make sure that you actually complete this in your notebook. Again, make sure you're being an active participant. So use your brain, use those muscles, try and figure it out. If you're unsure, that's totally fine. You can always email me your questions or come see me during office hours. That's what they're for. And also write down your questions so that you can ask them in class. But here again, we're looking for two orange birds mating. What are the offspring's phenotypes? If you're still confused with our vocabulary, phenotypes and genotypes, please make sure you go back to that video on gene vocabulary and get that in your notebook so you can refer back to it. All right, so for answer number two, right, our genotypes for orange are R, Y. So we have two birds that are mating that are both orange. So we have RY crossed with RY gives us RR, RY, and YY. Here we have 25% are red. Here we have 50% are orange, and here 25% are yellow. So notice, unlike with dominant and recessive, if you have a new genotype, you also have a new phenotype. So with just dominant and recessive, right, the dominant one could cover up the recessive one, and so the phenotype might be different. Here, every time you have a different genotype, you also have a different phenotype. Okay? Write down any questions you have and come see me during office hours or email me. Okay, moving on. My next question for you is, in a litter produced by a white cow and a red cow, the offspring are neither red nor white, but what we call roan. And that means red and white together. So they're not mixed together, they're not blended like with incomplete dominance, but you're seeing both of those things together. So again, how is this possible? Take a minute to think about it. What do you think's going on with this sort of genetics? You can pause the video, do whatever you need to, but think about it. Okay, so here we have a different inheritance pattern, right? There are multiple ways we can inherit traits from our parents. They can be dominant or recessive. They can be incomplete dominant with the mixing of paints, or we can have co-dominance. So this is where both traits from the parents are expressed in the phenotype. So make sure you've written this down in your notebook as well, because it's really easy to get confused between incomplete dominance and co-dominance. So this should definitely be a time where you should pause this video, write this down in your notebook. Okay, moving onwards. Here is our example. In cows, fur color can be red, white, or roan, in which both red and white fur are expressed. I want you to predict the possible outcomes, genotypes and phenotypes, of a cross between a white cow and a roan cow. Okay. This is going to look very similar to our incomplete dominance. Okay. I'm going to have you guys do this by yourselves, and we're going to go over it on Tuesday, the next time I see you. So right now, pause this video, do this in your notebooks, right? Make sure you can check your work. Again, otherwise this isn't that helpful for you. Okay, so how does incomplete dominance differ from codominance? How are we going to remember this? How can we tell the difference? Okay, here's a picture showing you the difference. So in incomplete dominance, we have a mixing of colors. In codominance, we see both colors expressed, right? Both of these are going to have the same genotype. This is RW, RW. So the only way that you know if something is incomplete dominance or codominant is if I tell you, or if the problem tells you. There's no other way. You can't distinguish between incomplete and codominance unless you are told by the prompt that it's incomplete dominant or it's codominant, because their genotypes look exactly the same. So that's pretty much it for those two. Your homework is the codominance and incomplete dominance practice problems, and we'll be going over some of those in class on Tuesday, but I will be collecting them as well. Again, if you have any questions, please email me or come see me in office hours. All right, thanks y'all.